This is the Life's Better podcast where we talk about how life is so much better with God, community, and purpose. And specifically today, Josh, we're going to be talking about how we can have really great relationships. What we're going to be talking about, it's good for all relationships, but we're going to really hone in on marriage relationships. The way that we even landed on this topic last week, you and I were talking about, unfortunately, some folks that we know, in the church, outside the church, that, their marriages are just really struggling. And you mentioned a message or a series that I did back in 2021. And you're like, yeah, that was actually really impactful. And not only did it help Emily and I, but we've been able to use it to help other people. And then you just kind of like off the cuff was like, yeah, you should teach that again sometime.
Yeah.
And so it was like,
which I don't ever do really.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I ever really try to tell anybody how to teach or where to go.
And so I was thinking, well, the podcast is coming up. The month of February, we typically do a relationship series in the church, and we are going to be doing that. But why not supplement it in the podcast as well? So this might be a review to some of you that hang out with our church. It might be, or it might be a review for those of you who hang out with the church, or it might be new to you altogether. But all the same, I think it's a really, hopefully helpful teaching.
Yeah.
If you are listening to this on our Apple podcast channel or on our Spotify channel, go ahead. You can do that, but if you want to get the full experience, you might want to check this out on YouTube.
Good call. I didn't even think to say that. 100%.
We've got some visuals, and that's the reason why we're saying, hey, maybe. But if you're driving, you just keep driving. Don't grab your phone and start
Don't pull
watching
up
us. No,
YouTube.
that's
Get
probably
safely
a bad
to your
idea.
destination.
And we'll try to maybe communicate what we're showing object-wise, so you can get a better experience. But all that to say, we're gonna talk about this big giant box that we have in front of us, and the box says hopes, dreams, and desires. And the truth is, Josh, we all have an invisible, this is very visible, but we all have an invisible box of hopes, dreams, and desires.
It's true.
We walk around with it and we enter into every relationship holding it. And it's a really good idea for any friendship for you to kind of get a sense of what is in people's invisible box of hopes, dreams, and desires. I would say that if you're in marriage, you should really know as best as you can what's in your spouse's box of hopes, dreams, and desires. If you're having trouble in your marriage, it might be because you don't really know what's inside that box, so you should probably figure it out. If you're dating, I would also stress, they may be looking really good on the outside, but what will probably make or break that relationship is that invisible box. So figure it out. What's in there? And is this something that you want to take on? And we'll talk about that right now, actually. So let's just cover a few of the things that really are in all of our boxes. So the first one we've got in here, it's money. We've got a big wad of cash. And we all have different hopes when it comes to money. Some people, they want more and more and more and more of this. Other people, they're okay living more frugally, and it's not as big of a deal. But certainly in a marriage, there's got to be a conversation about this. There's got to be a conversation of, hey, are we going to have a budget? Some people are like, what is that? I don't know what a budget is. We just, my plan is to win the lottery and we'll just live on, the proceeds of the lottery. But this is a really good idea to have an idea of what is in the box of your spouse when it comes to financially. What are they expecting? Josh, I'm curious for you and Emily, what were some of the differences in your thought processes when it came to spending, saving, when it came to having, so much, not so much? What was some of the...
Yeah, so it's something that we've actually talked about with students before, and many of you know, if you know us, that Emily is actually 2 years older than me for 21 days, which is actually happening right now. She's 3 years older than me, which is great. I love those days. I get to pick on her even more. But when we got married, we were dating throughout college and doing a long distance thing where I was in Campbellsville, and the moment that I graduated was within a month we were married. And so I went from living with actually only but 5 dudes in a 3-bedroom home with no thought really on saving. We were just trying to afford food that week to survive. And like some of my friends worked at Chick-fil-A, others worked at Little Caesars, and so they would bring home like the boxes and
Yeah,
like
yeah,
we,
yeah.
that
The
we would,
leftover stuff.
yeah, like, and we would like, I didn't know if I was gonna for sure eat a nice dinner that night or if it was gonna be, you know, some chips that I had
Sure.
in the closet. And so like in my mind, I didn't realize it, but I was going in with basically no expectation of budget, of saving for anything. And Emily had been 2 years out. She had been in a career, like her teaching job. She had been like learning to save, learning to make budgets. And so I take all of that in, and she's like, "Hey, like, what are we gonna like?" You know, and in my mind, I'm like,
We'll figure it out.
yeah, you know,
it's
like
all right.
I'll go get groceries today, I guess, for today's meal. But it was interesting. Like we both we had talked about money.
Yeah.
But the moment that we got married, I realized you've been talking about like knowing your spouses, but I think something else that's really important is knowing my own.
Yeah.
And like that was actually huge to realize that, you know, I would have told people, I don't have really any expectation for money, but I did.
Yeah.
I just didn't know it. You
Yeah,
know? And
yeah.
so we had very different like budgeting habits. I had to learn everything, and I loved math, so like it was actually a fun. Like I brought to the table. Emily hates math. I got to
Okay.
bring like, well, we could actually do this a little bit differently here or that. Like and
She gave the general framework,
Yeah.
and you kind of worked the details.
oh man, she's so organized. Like thousands of tabs. Everything's color coordinated. And I was like, well, we could like, you know, I don't know. I had
Yeah.
a couple of. I brought the math into
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
So-
no, absolutely. And I like that you brought up the fact that it's not just about their box. We need to understand what our expectations are heading into it. What are my dreams? What
Yeah.
are my desires? And can I articulate them? Otherwise, if we're not sure, but they're in there somewhere, there's going to be frustration.
I'll tell you, I mean, most of our issues, like early on in marriage, which I've been frank with a lot of people, like our first year might have been my least favorite year out of all the years we've spent together, just because I didn't realize how much I had given just this invisible box of this is what I expect from my wife. And I felt awful the moment that like we were going through this series. I had already gotten to this conclusion, but it finally like put it in words of, man, I put so much on Emily that I expected from her that it was hurting us.
Sure.
And like almost like we didn't get close to like divorcing, but like there were some really bad fights
Yeah.
that I caused. I would have said she caused because she didn't fulfill my box of desires.
Yeah.
But it was because I put these unreasonable expectations on
Sure.
her.
No, it makes sense. One of the other things that you oftentimes will find out is, you know, silly things like, okay, cleaning. For those of you who can't see this, we've got a little cleaning container here, and there's something that you got to figure out. It's all right, well, we're going to do chores. Like, what are the chores that you're going to do? What are the chores that I'm going to do? Like,
Yeah.
I'm never going to touch the toilet. You, of course, are going to touch the toilet. When Dane and I, we got married, we didn't mind cleaning together, but when it came to the products used, like when it came to cleaning a countertop, like the rag, in my mind, like the rag, that's what you used. And she was all about the sponge, and I just don't like the sponge. You can't like get as many crumbs, and it's just like gross, and it starts to. So I was all about the rag. She was all about the sponge, and I mean we didn't have a breakup conversation over it, but we had to figure it out because we had different hopes when it came to cleaning and desires for cleaning. And then, of course, there's the where you live. Are we going to remain close to family? Are we going to move out of state? Potentially, international? Are we going to buy? Are we going to build? Are we going to rent? Are we going to sleep under the stars all for the rest of our lives? The housing thing is a big deal. What were some of the different thoughts when it came to your living space?
Yeah. Well, when we first got married, Emily had a job in Frankfurt. I had the starting job here, and Lawrenceburg isn't huge, but this is like the far side of Lawrenceburg from Frankfurt, and so it took a while. Like we didn't think it would be that big of a deal, but like the idea of commuting a long way for me was like, I really don't want to do that. Like I want to be able to, drop everything if a student's need something, or like after everything's over, I don't want to spend like 30 minutes driving home. And Emily's the same way, like with teaching. Like she's like, I don't want a huge commute every single morning and every evening. And so trying to figure that out, like especially when you don't have a lot of experience, it's not like one of us could demand like,
Right.
you know what, we're in high demand, so Emily, you can move to Lawrenceburg and do a job here, or I could go to Frankfurt and find a job there.
Yeah.
So there was some compromise that had to happen. We rented in Lawrenceburg for a little while, and then realized we hated renting from that area, and very quickly looked for a house, which we bought. I don't know if you remember.
I do.
We lived in Frankfurt,
Yeah.
but like just slightly into Frankfurt, and
Yeah.
that was not my favorite thing. I think my expectation was, I would love to live in that house right beside our church and just walk to church.
That would be awesome.
But yeah, that was a big difference.
But then
for us.
students could just walk to your house, and there would be like no freedom. Yeah. There's different expectations when it comes to house. There's different expectations even when it comes to
Racing cars?
What you drive.
Yeah.
The stereotypical dude might want a sports car. I'm holding up a toy NASCAR car, and for me, I kind of had that. When Dana and I met, I was riding a motorcycle, and I just kind of assumed I'm gonna drive this thing, ride this thing until the day I die. And then I realized that day may come a lot sooner if I keep riding this thing. So now I'm rocking the minivan, and I love the minivan, but there was a shift that had to take place for me to be okay with that. And then, of course, there's time. We've got different expectations when it comes to our time. There's all right, are we going to be the couple that sleeps in until 12 on Saturday, or are we going to be the ones that get up way too early and start working on our projects? Are we going to spend every second together because we just love each other and that was what we felt like when we were dating? Or is it you know what, I'm kind of more introverted and I need at least 5 hours away from me and the kids every day? What are we going to do with our time? How's that time component maybe different between you and Emily?
This one's like, I talked about one that I had to realize I was putting on her. She was also putting on me. She's an introvert, huge introvert. Something funny that happened recently was we were playing a game with our family, and you had to like rank yourself based off of extroversion, introversion, and we wrote down things, and without being able to see them, we put them in the proper order. And once everything was flipped up, mine was at 97. And Emily's
for
was
extrovert.
For extrovert, and Emily had written 3 for extroversion.
Wow.
And so we're just like polar opposites.
Wow.
Emily would love to stay home as much as possible. She said without me, she'd be a hermit. And I would just be out. I wouldn't be home ever. And I assumed that, we would go hang out with friends a lot. We would, go to our families, go out. Like, if there's an opportunity to sign up for something, we're going to sign up for it,
Right.
And she's just like, no, like, I would love to just spend every moment with just you at home.
Yeah.
And that was hard because I was like, wait, what? Like, why would we? What
Home's good for sleeping,
Like,
but why do I need to hang out there longer than I need
man.
to?
And like her love language is time, and so like there was really bad moments where like she expected like this is time that we should have spent together, and you wanted to go out and do stuff with friends, and I was like, yeah, but I need my time with my friends.
Sure.
Like, I'm not willing to give that up, and so big problems there.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
No, that one's one that I think oftentimes, particularly in the dating season, you of course want to spend all your time together.
Yeah.
But then once it's hey, we're in a routine and a rhythm, either it's not really practical, or it's you know what, maybe we're actually healthier apart sometimes, and so there can be some struggle with that. And then of course another really big one really just comes down to like kids. Are we gonna be a couple that has kids? And if we have one kid, well, is it fair to the kid to only have one, or do you need to invite a second one into the family?
Or maybe 4.
See, that was the thing. Like when I taught this message originally, I had 4 children. And honestly, I thought that was a pretty big compromise from the 0 children that I was kind of going into marriage with. I was like, man, you got 4 out of me? And sure enough, now, several years later, we have 6. We have 6 kids. And my wife has had her hopes, dreams, and desires met there because even as a kid, like she just pictured herself with 6 kids. So, you know, fortunately, God changed my mind and I wanted kids too. But yeah, things can change. And then, you know, you've got things like travel. We've got our hopes and dreams when it comes to travel. Most people have some, you know, dream of traveling. Some of it's international. Some of it's like, okay, anywhere as long as they speak English, you know, or it's outside the United States. No, that's scary. We're going to just travel inside. No, places like California are creepy. We're going to travel, but it's going to be in Kentucky. And so there's all kinds of different thoughts when it comes to travel. And then, of course, you know, you've got the calendar of, particularly as you're negotiating extended family, you know, hey, I'm going to give, you know, your family, I don't know, Groundhog's Day, while my family gets Christmas, Easter, 4th of July, and Thanksgiving, you know. Did you guys have, as you guys were figuring out
all the time.
calendar issues?
Yeah. Well, we both love our family, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, it's tough.
Now, on your, maybe we shouldn't share this on the podcast, but were there problems with in-laws' hopes,
I was
dreams,
about
and
to
desires?
say, you know, like this isn't just our boxes,
Yes.
right? Like that's family's boxes. I would say that's probably worse.
Yeah.
Like my family and her family had to adjust to, wait, you're not gonna do what you've always done? Like, and
We're not gonna like wake up Christmas morning and do the PJ thing? What? No, we've always done that. And then we've got our boxing gloves, how to resolve conflict. Everybody's got different hopes for resolving conflict. Some people are we're just gonna share every little thought, feeling we have with each other. And other people are like, if I do that, you'll hate me because some of the thoughts and feelings that I have towards you right now aren't good. And so I gotta keep those silent. Or it's are we gonna be the yellers? Are we gonna slam doors every once in a while? No, that's totally dysfunctional. Like, we don't wanna be like the weird family down the street. And so it's how do we actually handle conflict effectively? And then there's always the one that men have. You know, men have some hopes, dreams, and desires when it comes to their marriage, and they have hopes, dreams, and desires for what their spouse will not wear to bed at night. You know, this is for those who can't see, maybe not the most attractive nightgown. And so, you know, we've got a wife who says, I thought he just wanted me to be comfortable. And we've got a husband say, if you need this to be comfortable, I'm not nearly as interested in your comfort as you think that I am. But this is a sampling of the hopes, dreams, and desires that we all carry along with us. And as Josh mentioned, what we do is when we enter a relationship, and sometimes it's not even just a marriage relationship, what we do is we enter a relationship and we hand this box over and we say, lucky you, you get to now meet all of my hopes, all of my dreams, and all of my desires. And when we do this, unfortunately, most people who receive it, they're not looking at this like, oh, fun. Instead, they're looking at this as a giant weight. And what is it a giant weight of? It's a giant weight of expectations.
yeah.
And when that weight of expectations settles on our souls, sometimes we just want to run for the hills. In fact, again, a lot of guys, stereotypical guys, you know, they're afraid of, you know, commitment. At least that's the reputation that sometimes guys have. And I wonder, that might be true, but I wonder if it's more that they got a glimpse inside the box and it was like, wait, that's inside the box? I don't know if I can handle that.
Yeah.
Again, at the risk of being maybe misunderstood and you losing respect for me, I didn't date a whole lot, but when I dated, there was a couple of times where like the girl that I was interested in like would give me a look or they'd just make like this comment. And it just filled me with fear. And I didn't have language for it at the time, but I think now it was like, I got a glimpse a glimpse of the expectation that she was gonna have of me. And it was like, I don't think so. Like, I gotta get out of here. And that's one of the problems, that when you finally turn that box over, oftentimes a mind shift takes place and there's a thought of, okay, you now owe me. Particularly in marriage, because right, there's an exchanging of vows, there's an exchanging of rings, and so a mind shift can take place where it's okay, guess what? Now you owe me. That's part of the deal, right? And the problem with that is anytime you have a you owe me mindset, it will undermine I love you. anytime you're saying, thinking, behaving, you owe me, it just undermines I love you. So the big question then is, well, what do we do with all this stuff? Like, what do we do with our box of hopes, dreams, and desires? And the challenge that we would encourage you guys to make or to take would be to keep it out of the expectation box and keep all these things in the hopes, dreams, and desires box.
Yeah.
Meaning, what we're doing is we're really asking a question, okay, of my spouse, of my friends, of my parents, of all these people in my life, okay, what do they owe me? Like, what do they really owe me? And someone may, go ahead and say, well, I know exactly what they owe me, particularly as a spouse. Like, they owe me a nice house because that's what I've always wanted. Like, they owe me the car. So, I've always dreamt for be racing down the highway. They owe me the trips. They owe me the money. They owe me cleaning of the house because I'm the one that's making the money. I mean, my life won't be, satisfying if I don't have the kids. And when they fight, they better, fight clean and not dirty. They owe me all their time. And my goodness, if she can't put on at least some lingerie every once in a while, I mean, I don't know if I'm ever going to be happy. Like, they owe me. They owe me these things. But Josh, you have experienced and you have probably seen, and biblically, this is definitely something that is supported, the most healthy and the most mature couples and relationships do not answer the, okay, what do you owe me with, you owe me fulfillment of my hopes, dreams, and desires. But they answer that question, you don't owe me anything, but I will still give generously to you.
Yeah.
You don't owe me anything, but I will still be generous in giving so that we can do our best to actually fulfill your box of hopes, dreams, and desires. The Apostle Paul, he says it another way. He actually encourages couples to have a submission competition within a marriage. In Ephesians chapter 5, verse 21, the Apostle Paul, he lists this section of, wives, you should behave this way in the marriage. And husbands, you should behave this way in the marriage.
Yeah.
And verse 21, right before he launches into that, he says, actually, what you need to make sure you're doing is having a submission competition. He says, you need to submit to one another in reverence for Christ. Submit to one another in reverence for Christ. So just like Christ submitted himself on the cross for our behalf, on our behalf, we submit to one another.
Yeah.
And in so doing, what are we doing? We're saying, okay, Josh, you don't owe me anything, but you know what? Because of Christ's great love for me and how he submitted to me, hey, is this the work environment that you like? Okay, you don't owe me anything, but what I'm going to do is my best to actually meet some of your hopes in the work environment or in a marriage. Some of you may hear that and your marriage has gotten to such a point that kind of terrifies you a bit. Because you've turned your boxes in the marriage into a bit of a tug of war. So again, for those of you who can't see, I've just pulled rope. And I tried to get the biggest rope possible, and I only came up with this little, spaghetti strap here. But what we end up doing is we turn this into a tug of war with our spouse, where on one hand, like the husband is tugging and pulling, and he's saying, hey, listen, if I'm not pulling and if I'm not tugging, by Easter, like we're gonna be bankrupt because she's gonna be spending all kinds of money that we just don't have. And on this end, she's pulling and tugging and saying, if I don't keep pushing this, he's not going to spend any time with me and the kids. And they're tugging back and forth and they're pulling back and forth. And the truth is that there is no hope in a healthy, growing, maturing marriage. There is no hope until both parties, let me emphasize, both parties let down the rope. There is no hope until both let down the rope. And so you may even ask, like, okay, well, how does that actually happen? Is it okay, honey, on two, 1, 2, why are you still holding on to yours? What does that look like? Certainly it begins with a conversation. But at the end of the day, if you are following Christ, you go first. Like if you are a follower of Jesus, you follow his examples, who while you were still sinning, let down the rope and he sacrificed on your behalf. And when your spouse sees that example of you letting down the rope, and as you're praying and as you're modeling, the goal, the hope would be they would do the same. And so, Josh, I know some of this teaching was pretty meaningful for you and Emily. Testimony time, just the impact that it's had on you and maybe even extending into I don't know, maybe even friends that you've seen kind of navigate and
Yeah.
have the struggle.
100%. It's funny to hear students and friends, and this is not me trying to pat Emily and I on our back, but we'll say like, "Oh, you guys are couple goals. Like we want a marriage like yours," and I just look at them and I'm like, it was not that way in the beginning.
Yeah.
And we had to work to get there. And like I was sharing at the beginning, like that I owe you or you owe me mindset was definitely on mine, and she'd admit hers too. But there were just moments where I realized I was reaping either because of that, like you owe me to Emily. I was reaping guilt on her of I'm not good enough. Like she would say that, like I'm not good enough for you. I'm not good enough, and like that sounds nice to hear, but like that's not good. If you're hearing that a lot, you're probably reaping the guilt on them and the shame on them, or it's coming from somewhere and you need to help them. Or it was reaping defensiveness on her. Like she's like, you shouldn't expect that from me, like type of thing. And a verse, because I apparently I didn't get this until after we had gotten into a better place, but it helped. Like it helped vocalize, and we talked about it after. Like, yeah, we were there. Like, holy cow! Like he's nailing it with what we had happen. But for me, it actually like I got a lot of this from the love chapter of the Bible, where after all of these things that Paul says love is, which I had given Emily, like, you better be patient with me, you better be kind, you better be all these things. At the end of that long list is it keeps no record of wrong.
Yeah.
And I realized that I had put all of those things in a box and I was checking a mark every time Emily wasn't those things. And I was like, I have not been loving to her. And I need to fix this. I need to let down that rope, and I need to say, hey, I'm sorry. Like I've had all of these expectations, and that all they're doing is killing that love between us. And like that I mean, she did the same thing. Like I'm not going to say that I was the first to let down the rope. I think it was very much like we had to talk a lot, and we had to go through these, but at the end of the day, we had to remember, and we had really great advice from people we knew saying, hey, like, you never need to look at it as like we're against one another. Right. Where if I get my way, that means she lost, or when she gets her way, that means I lost. We're on the same team. Our things that we're facing are things we're facing together. And so if she wins it with something, then I've won. Yeah. If I win with something, then she's won. And so if she comes home and she's upset and angry and like starts to vocalize that like frustration that happened at work through, hey, you didn't clean these dishes, like what the heck? I'm not immediately like, you are like, I'm not, I shouldn't, it should be, you know what, I'll take care of those, but like, what's going on?
Yeah.
You know, I'm on your team.
Yeah.
Just a quick reminder, I'm on your team. How can I help like get you out of the funk from today? And then immediately it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm taking this out on you and I don't need to, or I'm giving you this expectation and I don't need to. And yeah, you know, I think for those of you that might be struggling, might be thinking like, I can't Jonathan, there's no way I can let go of my rope because they're gonna just run all over me. It needs to go back to, what is my ultimate hope for my marriage? Is it one where I always get my way?
Yeah.
Or is it one where we're both happy, you know, and we're both submitting to one another and we're having that lasting marriage? Because the ones that you see that are like ones you want to model are not the man's getting everything they want or the woman's getting everything that she wants. It's they're happy together and they love to just be with each other because they're both doing that submission competition. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, it's good. In fact, I enjoyed the fact that you recognized we're on the same team. In fact, there's been times where I've been in a relationship with people and I just have to kind of pause and not in a judgmental way, just kind of ask, hey, am I your enemy right now?
Yeah.
And I just ask, like, just honestly, and that usually is like, well, no, of course not. It's like, yeah, but I kind of feel that right now based on some, and it's oh no, I'm sorry. And it's like, yeah, cool. We're on the same team, right? So what can I do to help you?
Yeah.
Because let's win together.
Yeah.
And to do that in marriage is huge. So whether you're married or not, whether or not you're playing tug of war with the hopes, dreams, and desires box or not, I think it's definitely in our best interest to model that example of Christ, who, what does he do? He does not say, you owe me, but instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you what you need in this moment. And that's grace, and that's through his death and resurrection on the cross.
Yeah.
And so we step into that as Christians, and we follow his example in all of our relationships. All right, enjoy your Valentine's experiences, and we'll see you guys in March.